Welcome to CSAC's Luncheon for the 2022 Legislative Conference. I am Riverside County's Supervisor, Chuck Washington, and CSAC's First Vice President. I'm glad, thank you. Love that lady. Don't tell my wife. I'm glad to see so many of you here with us today. I also hope you brought your appetite for a conversation and camaraderie, or for food. It's all a good reason to be here. But the best reason to be here is to listen to our keynote speaker who's going to kick off this session. On April 23rd, 2021, Attorney General Rob Bonta was sworn in as the 34th Attorney General of the state of California and is the first person of Filipino descent and the second Asian American to occupy that position. Not only is he a prime example of the diversity and change that needs to happen at the state, but he is a leader for justice and fairness. From working with United Farm Workers and the Civil Rights Movement, Attorney General Bonta has a history of standing up for those who are harmed and who need an advocate. We, as an association, are much alike that way. Prior to serving in the Assembly, Attorney General Bonta worked as the Deputy City Attorney for the City and County of San Francisco. Once a member of the county family, always a member of the county family. Isn't that right? Albeit, I don't know why San Francisco has to have more county supervisors than the rest of us, right? Please join me in welcoming California State Attorney General Rob Bonta.
Thank you, Supervisor Washington, for that very kind introduction, and wonderful to be with you all today. I know for many of you it's the first time in person in some time, so I'm glad we get the chance to come together in person, and it's wonderful to be together in that way. It's different than when you're on Zoom, when you're doing it together in the same room at the same place at the same time. And I see many of my favorite supervisors from around the state of California here today. I'm not going to name any names because I'm going to get in trouble. You're all my favorites, and I appreciate all that you do. Perfect politician answer, right? But I just want to say thank you first and foremost at the outset for everything that you're doing for the communities that rely on you, that need you during a very difficult time. And we all remember that time when we first heard of the lockdown, as we were entering into the unknown, a lot of fear, anxiety, nervousness, worry. And people looked to their government, to their leaders, to the people they elected to fight for them and keep them safe and protect them to do exactly that. And so we were all in the pandemic as we were fighting for those who were touched by it as well, as we were touched by it ourselves, our own families. So thanks for stepping up and doing what you all do to keep your community safe, keep them healthy, and your job is always hard, balancing tight budgets with the important services that are needed for your community. But I think the last 2 years in particular, you stood up, met the moment, and did what was necessary to keep your community safe. So let me just at the outset say thank you to all of you. And as you continue your important work to provide essential services for the communities relying on you, here at the Department of Justice, we have your back because we share the same goal. We want to do everything in our power to keep our communities safe and healthy and prosperous, our counties, our cities, our neighborhoods. And this commitment is, for me, my team, my office, it's our North Star. As I lead the largest state Department of Justice in the nation, I'm committed to ensuring our families are safe and that California remains the best place to live, to work, and to do business. And because of regional communities like the ones you represent, the Golden State leads the nation in so many things, and leads the globe as well, and many others. We are the 5th largest economy in the world, something you've heard many times before. It does bear repeating. We are continuing to thrive economically. We're the number one. We are number one in the nation for starting new businesses. We're number one in manufacturing. We're number one in agriculture, number one in entertainment, tourism, technology, and college graduates. And the reason why, I believe, our values. our people, our culture, our climate. Together, they are our own secret sauce here in California, our secret formula for success. In California, we prove that you can be successful, not despite a forward-leading agenda, a commitment to working families, the environment, equity, and justice, but because of those very commitments. And even with success, though, we know that challenges remain as we emerge from the pandemic. The data and the statistics that we're facing they speak volumes. More than a third of Californians are living in or near poverty, approximately 2 million of them children, something we all know is not acceptable. As median home prices reach north of $800,000, only 1 in 4 families now earn enough to buy a home. For Black and Latino families, it's even fewer, about 1 in 6, all as millions struggle to afford their rent, and over 160,000 Californians experience homelessness. And while crime rates remain near historic lows overall, challenges remain when it comes to public safety, including an unacceptable uptick in gun violence, which was responsible almost exclusively for last year's increased homicide rate. We have our work cut out for us, as that data clearly shows. And as leaders, we must stand up for those in society who go overlooked, who face challenges, who need us to be there for them, who are the most vulnerable. And that's how I see my role as California's Attorney General. As the Chief Law Enforcement Officer, I see my role as being the people's attorney, someone who stands up for everyday folks, stands with them in their fights and to face the challenges, especially those who are hurt, harmed, abused, especially the most vulnerable. And this is something that's been handed down to me. It's in my DNA. I got it from my parents, who are my biggest supporters and my biggest inspirations. My father marched in Selma. He was there as a grad student. I was in church with Martin Luther King Jr., met Stokely Carmichael, organized for voting rights, organized for civil rights. My mother is an immigrant from the Philippines. She came here when she was 28 years old for grad school. That's where she met my father. Both my parents went back to the Philippines as missionaries after grad school. They had my sister first, then me. And when I was 2 months old, they had to make a decision. They wanted to raise me in a place where they had the rule of law, due process, civil rights, and human rights. And they did not see that future for me in the Philippines. As Ferdinand Marcos rose to power, a year from the date of my birth, declared martial law, had a dictatorship marred by human rights abuses, arresting, imprisoning, torturing, sometimes killing his political opponents. My mom was one of the political dissidents that he might count as one of his political opponents. So my parents decided to rebuild our lives in California. And when I was 2 months old, we came to Los Angeles. I lived in Echo Park. My parents started working for the United Farm Workers of America, collecting signatures outside of supermarkets as part of the lettuce boycott, and then eventually invited to go to the headquarters of the movement in La Paz, the Central Valley, outside of Bakersfield. And my family and I, we lived in a trailer there. Our family of 5. My brother was born when my parents were working there. My parents got $5 a month or a week for their service to the union. We lived a stone's throw away from the home of Cesar Chavez. My father worked in the front office. He helped with Cesar Chavez, setting up healthcare clinics for farm workers in California, in Florida, and other places. My mom worked in the preschool. The amazing Dolores Huerta, who we're lucky to have still fighting for us today, was there. Philip Veracruz, the great Filipino-American leader. And the thing that really stood out for me was that the movement, the United Farm Workers, the work my parents did, was the only thing protecting very vulnerable farm workers from the potential for mistreatment and harm and abuse. And my parents fought for a fair contract. They fought for fair working conditions, things we take for granted now, like bathroom breaks and shade breaks and water breaks. And it didn't matter who you were, whether your father was Cesar Chavez or a migrant worker, whether you were Latino or Filipino or black or white, everyone was there for the mission, to fight for more justice and to fight for a better society and fairer treatment. And those lessons have inspired me to continue to fight for justice, and inspired me to become an attorney, a public attorney, and then eventually to run for office, to continue to serve, to do my best to carry the very heavy baton passed down by my parents, to continue that fight for justice. And at the California Department of Justice, we are doing everything in our power to advance justice for Californians in all its forms. It looks like many things. We're taking on big polluters and powerful corporations who cheat our residents, your residents, small businesses and workers. We're fighting crime, working in partnership with your sheriffs and local law enforcement agencies to prevent gun violence in your neighborhoods, take down traffickers, human traffickers, as well as gangs, prosecute organized retail crime, and more. We're standing up for racial justice at every level, confronting the forces of hate and intolerance in our communities. We're working to rebuild trust between Californians and their law enforcement, making our neighborhoods safer, because trust generates safety, and safety generates trust. We're enforcing our tenant protection and housing laws, using every tool we have to address the housing shortage and affordability crisis plaguing our counties and cities that you know about all too well. We're defending access to health care and reproductive freedom as it comes under attack nationwide. And this week marks 1 year since I took office. And in the past year, I've traveled to counties across the state. I've had that honor, that privilege, that pleasure. And when I've spoken with local leaders, law enforcement, and residents, I know many of these issues are front and center for all of you. And that's especially true for issues of public safety and well-being, from crime to the opioid crisis. As we tackle these issues head on at DOJ, we do so in the spirit of collaboration, partnership. I've always believed that we get more done when we do it together, that there's things that we can only do together that we can't do alone. And we're proud to do our work alongside our partners, including all of you. For example, when it comes to public safety, we recently announced the results of DOJ's 2021 Armed Prohibited Persons System operations, where we made California safer by seizing nearly 1,500 illegal firearms across the state, from ghost guns to machine guns, and taking over 300,000 rounds of ammunition off of our streets. Our Armed Prohibited Persons System is a critical law enforcement tool, unique in the nation to California. First of its kind here in California, only of its kind, right here in California, where our APS enforcement teams, in partnership with local law enforcement, use the system to cross-reference firearm owners against criminal history records, mental health records, and restraining orders. So we see that there are people who purchased a gun legally at one time, own that gun, continue to possess it, but have become prohibited because of the public safety risk. And my agents go door to door, knocking on doors, not knowing what's behind those doors, to remove those guns from those who shouldn't have them. And in part because of our increased partnership with local law enforcement during regional large-scale sweeps in different parts of the state, we seized 15% more firearms this year than the year before. And our collaboration with your sheriffs here is also a public safety story, and it must continue. At the DOJ, we're proud to provide grants to fund APS work at the county level, giving money to sheriffs' departments to expand our work, be a force multiplier with us. And I encourage your law enforcement agencies to apply if they're interested in receiving some of that funding. Organized retail theft, another area where we've worked together. In addition to preventing gun violence through APS, we've gotten after it when it comes to organized retail theft. One important case in point, we recently announced the arrest and felony charges against 9 individuals who we allege organized a criminal scheme targeting retailers throughout roughly a dozen counties, headquartered mostly in LA County, but moving across many counties and many jurisdictions up and down the state, Central Valley to NorCal, in the Bay Area, even across state lines, stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars in merchandise, and moving those goods offshore, actually, to sell internationally. And now, because of the work that we've done together, we made arrests, and they're all facing the serious felony charges that the severity of their conduct requires. And just a few months ago, in San Mateo County, we worked in partnership with the local sheriff and law enforcement there to secure felony sentences for a group of individuals who led what has been reported as the largest organized retail theft ring ever busted in our state's history. history involving over, unfortunately, $8 million of stolen merchandise from retailers. So for those who break the law, peddle stolen goods, we're going to hold them to account, and we're going to work with local jurisdictions to make sure that happens. We've also worked very closely with the California Highway Patrol's Organized Retail Crime Task Force, again, emphasizing, knowing that partnership and collaboration is so important to this work. Our public safety collaboration doesn't end there. We've worked to dismantle organized criminal operations in Fresno. We were just there last week, in San Bernardino, in Sacramento, right here, in Visalia, literally stopping homicides in progress, stopping 2 mass shootings in progress because of the work that we did, the surveillance that we had, the real-time surveillance and intelligence that we were gathering, saving lives in the process, also taking illegal guns off the street that were being trafficked, illegal drugs as well, and holding folks accountable who were involved in those operations. And we also collaborate with local law enforcement to provide DNA analysis, toxicology, ballistics, laboratory services. Proud and thankful to be able to provide that support to our law enforcement partners. Let's talk about housing for a moment, because we also know that partnership is critical here, and that housing affordability and homelessness that we're facing, it's a crisis. There's no other way to describe it. It's a full-on state of emergency, a full state of crisis. I've always believed that it's a shared challenge to the state of California, and it's a shared responsibility to address that challenge, that no one needs to do everything to share, to solve our homeless problem, to build more housing, but everyone ought to do something and make a contribution. And we have state laws that require local jurisdictions to participate in that solution, to build more housing, and we are serious about those laws. They are laws. They are not suggestions or advisories. They are to be followed. And so we created a housing strike force within the California Department of Justice to really take on this issue of homelessness and housing affordability, the crisis that we're in. We're taking an intersectional approach in that space, enforcing and protecting tenant rights, making sure that folks are not improperly, unfairly, unjustly, unlawfully evicted into homelessness, making sure our mortgage servicers are treating their clients appropriately. Also, supporting other consumer protection laws. We're issuing alerts advising tenants and homeowners of their rights and their legal protections, many of which are new and specific to the pandemic. Also issuing guidance to local governments to help your cities and communities meet your housing goals and requirements. And we do that again in partnership. We've let some cities know that we believe they're in violation of the law. We don't seek to have an adversarial relationship. We don't seek litigation or ongoing litigation. We seek solutions. We seek compliance with the law. And so we hope through the conversations that we're having with local jurisdictions, more will comply earlier with the law and help us build more housing throughout the state of California that's so sorely needed. Then, when it comes to opioids, we're also your partner. And we're battling an epidemic within the pandemic when it comes to the opioid crisis that has taken, unfortunately, sadly, tragically, more than 1 million American lives. For a long time now, DOJ has been working to combat this epidemic, and after years of investigations, last summer, as part of a coalition of states and territories, we announced a historic $26 billion settlement with Johnson & Johnson, with Cardinal, McKesson, AmerisourceBergen, for their role in the crisis. And earlier this year, I was proud to announce that well over 400 California cities and counties, representing about over 97% of our population, all signed on to this historic settlement. I know that was something that in past proposals and versions of this settlement were not necessarily looked upon favorably by all the cities and counties, and we worked hard to reach out to our cities and counties to make it work so that it can work for all of us. So pleased and thankful for that outcome. And as a result of our local government signing on, California is slated to receive close to our full share of that $26 billion, over $2 billion, to help with the ongoing opioid crisis, opioid abatement programs, resources, services. And that will all flow to you, to the local level, a lot of it going through counties and also the cities within your counties. So as you put these critical dollars to work at the DOJ, we're going to keep holding folks accountable. We're going to keep being your partner, whether it's a big pharmaceutical company on Wall Street or a fentanyl dealer on Main Street. We're going to make sure our communities are safer and are healthier. And our work continues. There's more to do. We're going to be going after other bad actors to make sure that they're held accountable as well, and they participate in the solutions to the ongoing opioid pandemic and epidemic. So, in closing, let me just say, I know our counties, they face many challenges. We're in as we emerge from the pandemic, we're still wrestling with the challenges of the pandemic, the inequities that were laid bare during the pandemic. We have climate challenges and gun violence challenges and housing affordability challenges, and the work continues. So you are needed more than ever, and I think all of our shared constituents deserve all of us to be working hand in hand in partnership and collaboration for their best interests. And I want you to know that our door is always open. It remains open to partnership, to working with all of you, and because we have shared goals and shared values. We want our communities and neighborhoods to be as safe, as healthy, as prosperous as possible. So with our innovative spirit leading the way here in California, that spirit that has always driven us forward, I know we're going to get it done. There's no challenge too big, no problem too difficult to solve. We can do it. You've always stepped up. We've always stepped up here in California to address the biggest challenges, and we've mostly done it when we do it together. So let me just thank CSAC for inviting me today. Thank you for your leadership. Thanks to all of you for coming here together from all the different respective places in the state where communities rely on you for your service and your leadership. I thank you for your service. Once again, let me end where I began with a big thank you for all that you do every day for the communities that rely on you. And if the DOJ can be of any service, we're here for you. Thank you.
Attorney General Bonta, I can't thank you enough for all that you're doing for all of the state of California, all of our residents. I couldn't help but be touched by your personal story of coming to America. My parents came from poverty in Mississippi in the 30s and 40s and moved us to California. And it provided an opportunity for growth for me and my sisters, and I can relate then to that. And you're a special person because of your background, your experience, your legal expertise, but also your service in the community. And I think I speak for everyone here. Thank you for your commitment to justice.
Attorney General, thank you for the opportunity. You mentioned specifically regarding the issue of housing. My name is Jaron. I'm from Tuolumne County. I wanted to ask, we updated a housing element. I think it is very widely believed in our community. This is a crisis. We got to address it. I think our elected leadership sees it. But we're dealing with the situation and deferred maintenance and issues. We're not standing in the way of these projects, but there are other factors. There's a lack of capital in the community. There's infrastructure issues to be able to develop undeveloped parcels. And then just updating our codes, which are woefully years out, and that takes a long time. When I hear task force, that concerns me because we're not trying to be a bad actor, but I would be afraid that we would be punished because we can't meet what are good but unachievable expectations. So I guess my question on that would be, on the other side of that, especially for, I think, rural counties struggling with that, will there be the state support to maybe send in staff that are able to help update these codes, help do technical assistance for the grants, water, sewer systems, and help us be able to meet those standards?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate the dimensions you just put on the issue and the challenges specifically in your county. And, for me, generally, if you're acting in good faith, if you want to solve a problem, if you're doing your best to comply with the law, we're here to be your partner in that effort. And we realize there are challenges. Let's identify them together, see what the pathway is to overcome them, and get to the outcomes that we all seek. We have bigger problems with folks who know what their duty is, know what their obligation is, can perform it, and are not. That's a problem for us. And even in those circumstances, we want to get on the same page. We want them to understand where we're coming from, make sure there's nothing that they know about or that they see that we don't, and find a pathway forward. It's collaborative solution identification. And so even when we've sent notices of violations, we don't seek to be adversarial. We seek to put a flag in the ground as to what our position is, and then to work together in how to get to the right solution. So I appreciate everything that you've shared. Our office is open. We have folks who can work with you to look at whatever it might be, infrastructure, codes, other challenges that are in the way, because you got to overcome those challenges if we're going to get the outcomes that we want. I know you can't just snap your fingers and make it happen, that there's often challenges that in the way. So we want to work with you on that, and if you have a open hand extended in partnership, we're going to receive that and work with you.
Good afternoon, Sue Novus, El Dorado County. May 10th is National Fentanyl Day, and I'm just signing a proclamation for that day because we have an issue. It's obviously a huge issue, mostly in our schools right now. As you know, fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, which is affecting children in a serious way right now with lots of overdoses and lots of deaths. What can we do as county leaders, and what can you do to help us to address this issue?
Thank you. A couple things, and thank you for raising that. And I think it just highlights the fact that you and many of you in this room are on the front lines seeing the tragedy, the harm, the pain that's being created by the fentanyl crisis. Some of that $2 billion that California is receiving that will be distributed to counties and cities can make its way to your county to help assist with ongoing challenges of opioids, including fentanyl. And so that money is on the way. It's been secured. We're seeking more money as well, and it is specifically designed to do exactly this, to address and mitigate and solve the ongoing challenges of opioids in all its forms. So that's item number one. Item number two is we are a few weeks away from announcing and rolling out a fentanyl task force that's going to be specifically focused on not opioids in generally, but fentanyl in particular and specific, and trying to identify the sources and what we can do to shut it down, manufacturers, distributors, making sure that what you've just described, children being harmed in our communities, is not the outcome, and that we stop it at the source. So we'll be working with law enforcement partners. There's going to be a multi-state component to it, potentially, multinational as well. So, but we share the urgency that you have just shared with me, and I appreciate your flagging of that and highlighting of that issue, and it's something that we care about deeply. So we're going to be getting some money for you, and also getting a task force stood up for you.
Attorney General Bonta, Grand Canal's Executive Director for CSAC. I want to make two comments, and I'm hoping that you can react to one of them. The first is related to opioid that we were just talking about, and it's really to thank you. To thank you for what's been a marked change in leadership and responsiveness and collaboration and partnership related to the opioid settlement. We got there in large part because you stepped in and you changed the landscape of it. And it really allowed us to get to a solution that was workable for California County. So very appreciative of the work there and the partnership.
Thank you.
But yes. The second thing I'm hoping you can respond to a little bit is actually to your comment around housing and homelessness, and that not one can do all, but all must do some. And it's just to reflect on the reality that there is nothing in statute that requires much of anything to actually be done by the state, cities, or counties. And until that changes, the system isn't going to work in the way that we want. The progress isn't going to be made in the way that we all want and expect to be done. And so we're hoping for partnership there as it relates to homelessness specifically, but also around the approach to housing and what is necessary in order for it to actually happen in communities. We don't build it, cities don't build it, but zoning is important as part of that. And so it's really trying to reset how that issue is approached, and we're having similar conversations with the administration and with the legislature around this very thing. The rules need to be different. The barriers that we face and that cities face and the expectations of both and of the city, and of the state and resources, all that needs to change in order to make marked progress on both the affordable housing and on homelessness. So I'm hopeful that we're able to build off of this and your comment about all need to do some to get to that place and to have a collaborative approach related to things like the housing element and the role that your office has begun to play in this space, which is unique and a first time in California's history. So I'm hoping you can comment a little bit on that.
Yeah, happy to. And let me just first say thank you for your kind words regarding the collaboration on the opioid settlement. And I want to thank many of you and our cities, our counties who reached out not long after I was sworn in as Attorney General and said, here are some of the things that haven't been working in the past. And not just to complain, but to say, here's a pathway forward that we prefer. Here's what we would like it to look like. And to me, it made a lot of sense. I appreciated the collaboration, the partnership that I talk about, the collaboration I talk about. It's not a talking point. It's real. It's how we get things done. And you have needs, we have needs, our shared constituents have needs, and we can find a way if we work together, listen to one another, and try to find those solutions and pathways forward. And I'm thankful that we did on the opioid settlement. On housing, I think, I deeply believe in that sort of that shared responsibility. Everyone needs to participate. We also, as leaders, as policymakers, as elected officials, we're always sort of wrestling with this. Is it the carrot or is it the stick? Are we incenting, providing funding, encouraging, or are we do we have the stick and holding folks accountable? Things like our arena numbers, and there's probably not enough accountability there, not enough teeth in that. And so we are looking at the places. There's a lot of great leaders in the legislature who have been working on housing. We have more things that are by right now. You can do it if you meet the prerequisites. Some dense housing projects near transit, under SB 10, lot splitting under SB 9. You can just do it if you meet the requisite requirements. There's no sort of discretionary review. But the requiring, that the sort of more forceful requiring of jurisdictions to do more, I think that's something that folks have wrestled with because of this carrot and stick debate. But it sounds like you, and maybe CSAC more broadly, is interested in more forceful requirements. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I'm happy to have a discussion more about what that might look like. Maybe that's part of your legislative priorities, and I had a chance to review some of those as I prepared for today's discussion. But I'd love to have a discussion with you more, what you see on the ground and what kind of housing policy would get to the solution that we all want. I say thank you once again to all of you for having me. Thank you.